The Ixon Lagos Chapter Education Committee, Mrs. Noye Izobi, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Shola. Good morning, everyone. The 29th President and Chairman of Council, Ixon, Mrs. Kumi Kundayo, FCIS, Vice President, Mrs. Uto Okpana, FCIS, the Treasurer, Mr. Francis Olawale, FCIS, the Chairman, Ixon Lagos State Chapter, Mr. Olufemi Shoko, FCIS, other executive members of the Lagos State Chapter, past presidents present online, members of the Council, fellows of the Institute, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second edition of our Ixon Lagos State Chapter Learning Hub. Our objective is simple: to provide a dynamic platform for members to enhance their knowledge, engage in thought-provoking discussions, and stay at the forefront of industry trends. Today's topic, an independent company secretary, facts, fiction, and future view, seeks to answer some of the top questions that company secretaries have faced. We will agree that the company secretary has evolved over the years and is indeed a far cry from the mere servant to do as he is told, as described by Lord Ussher in 1887. However, some pertinent questions still remain, some of which we hope to get answers to during this session. As we dive into this discussion, your active participation is encouraged. Our esteemed discussants are ready to answer your questions and share from their wealth of knowledge. Welcome, and thank you again for joining us. Back to you, Shola.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I must say that I am really excited about this topic, and I am particularly excited about the lineup of our discussants for today. This topic is one that is not often discussed a lot of times, so it's an honor to learn from people that are experienced and they've gained a wealth of experience for decades and multiple decades. But let me state that we try to streamline and summarize the bios of our discussants as much as possible to fit into the 1 hour schedule we have. So when I list out their bio, it doesn't mean that that's what they've done a lot. And I am particularly honored to have you in our midst. First on my list is Mr. Godwin Samuel. Mr. Godwin Samuel is a highly experienced company secretary and governance professional. He is a general counsel, a chartered arbitrator, a chartered tax professional. He was the former group company secretary and legal advisor to UACN Nigeria PLC and its subsidiary companies. He is currently the lead counsel at Godwin Samuel Chambers. You are welcome, sir. Good morning, Mr. Godwin Samuel. Please, can you confirm if he's on board? Okay, I believe he would join us in the course of our discussion.
So good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And second and next on our list is Mrs. Abiola Lasende. She is a legal practitioner, an IT enthusiast, and a governance professional of over 20 years, garnered from different industries within and outside Nigeria. Mrs. Lasende has worked as a chartered secretary in several companies, including PZ Cussons Nigeria, Cadbury Nigeria PLC, UBA Trustees, and DN Mayer PLC. She is also the recipient of many awards. You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Olushola. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. And last and by no means the least discussant for today is Mrs. Kitty Martins Wigwe. She's a legal professional with over a decade experience working as a corporate compliance consultant, a board governance advisor, and corporate governance specialist. She is the founder of Beyond My Law Degree, an initiative focused on personal and career development for lawyers and non-lawyers. She is currently the head of the Corporate Governance and Company Secretary team at Denton Akers Law. You're welcome, Titi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Shola. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And thank you all once again for joining this discussion. We hope that it will be an enlightening and beneficial discussion. And I'll turn my attention to our discussant to get this conversation rolling. My first question goes to all three discussants, but I'd like Mr. Godwin Samuel to start. When you heard this topic, sir, I don't know, please, what came to your mind? And does an independent company secretary exist? And if they do, what are the qualifications and traits that an effective independent company secretary should have?
Well, thank you very much. So the issue is, do we really have an independent company secretary? I would say yes and no. Yes.
It will appear that Mr.
To the extent that I think what we call independent company secretary, in the context of, I would say it's more of describing. Are you hearing me?
Yes, please. We
Hello?
can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, please.
Sorry for the disruption. So I was saying that what we would describe as an independent company secretary, I think my own understanding of it, going by law and regulations, will be more of an external company secretary. So the so-called independent company secretary is somebody who is not an employee of a company, who is not working as an in-house company secretary. And so if you look through the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018, you will actually find that in principle 8.2, it said where the company secretary is an employee of the company. So if the company secretary is not an employee of the company, if the service is outsourced, then we can then begin to talk about an independent company secretary. And you know, when you look at CAMA 2, looking at the qualifications for a secretary in section 332, it then begins to talk about appointing a body corporate or a firm. And the partners must be qualified under the Act, either they are charter secretary, they are legal practitioner, they are a chartered accountant. You know, so if you have an aggregation or a firm of these professionals, to the extent that they are retained externally by the company, we can then begin to describe them as independent. And looking at the advanced English Learners Dictionary, it says independent means not connected with or not influenced. So I think maybe in my subsequent contributions, we'll be talking in terms of, you know, the influence, who influences the company secretary, how far should he or she be influenced. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like Mrs. Lasende to please share her thoughts on this same question.
Thank you. Thank you, Lushola. Thank you, Mr. Samuel. Titi, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Good
Same
to
here.
see you too.
Same here.
Right,
Well done.
right. So, Mr. Samuel has given us a very robust background from the legal perspective, from the position of the law. And I would just say that, typically the company secretary role is a complex one. And to be honest, you cannot just become a company secretary by accident. A company secretary will often find herself at the center of conflicting positions and priorities. There's so many stakeholders that she needs to engage with. So the concept of independence can be a bit more, can be a bit complicated. From Mr. Samuel's submission, we've seen that, globally, yes, you cannot fit that role if you are not perceived to be independent from the external, source. That is, if you're engaging an external firm of company secretaries. But I would say that the quality of independence is what every company secretary should imbibe. We should be seen to have that independency as a value. So whether we are in-house or we are coming from an external firm, it should be something that should define our management style, our work ethic, the kind of value we bring to the table. So for me, in addition to everything that Mr. Samuel has said, personal attributes that I would qualify as that I would say is an imperative. It's a must-have. We must be independent in our judgment. We must be impartial. We must be fair. And these are principles that we've enunciated under corporate governance. So let me just leave it at that to say that, can we be truly independent as a function or in our role? No. But can we be dynamic? Absolutely. I will give that a yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Titi, I'd like you to share your thoughts as well, if you agree that an independent company secretary exists.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Olushola, and thank you, Mr. Samuel and Mrs. Lasayinde, for your very insightful contributions. For me, the way I'll look at it is, from looking at the background, why a company secretary is needed in the first place. It's because they're supposed to bring or be the independent advisors to the board, on all matters relating to corporate governance. So like Mrs. Lasayinde said, independence is a critical component of that office. It's a critical requirement for the office of a company secretary. That is the main point, I dare say, of that office. So I'll look at it from what is the ideal and what is practice. So ideally, like I've already said, a company secretary should be completely objective, be independent, focus solely on the best interests of the company.
Hello, Titi.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I didn't get what.
Oh, you couldn't hear me.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, so sorry. I'm not sure what you heard last.
Hello? Sorry?
I'm not sure what you heard last.
Okay, you agreed, you said something about the reason the
Okay, people are saying we can hear you in the chat box.
We can hear you.
Okay, okay. They said it's my network. Apologies.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure what you heard last, but well, I was going to say, I would look at it from two different perspectives. What is the ideal and what is practice? So ideally, as I said, company secretaries should be independent, they should be completely objective, they should focus on the best interests of the company. And this is really key because in practice, corporate governance relies heavily on the advice that the board is given. And so it's very important for company secretaries to be independent because that's the only way that they can be objective in advising the board. You see that large corporations, always ensure that the office of the company secretary is as independent as possible, especially in terms of reporting. You see that large corporations, most of the time, they don't have company secretaries reporting to line management. They have company secretaries either reporting to the board or to any another officer, just to ensure that there's no conflict. And I dare say that that's why sometimes company secretaries who are able to function independently, you see that sometimes they're able to transition into INED roles, because you see that they're used to bringing independent perspective to the board, you know, in their advisory, in their actions and all of that. So you see that sometimes company secretaries who are truly independent are able to transition into INED roles. But in reality, like I said, I'm looking at both what is ideal and what is practice. In reality, you see that most company secretaries are not as independent as they
want to be.
Yes, as they should be, because sometimes it's conflicts of interest, conflicts in reporting, line reportings and all of that. Okay, I see that your life points to. But yeah, so overall, I will just say that a critical component of that office is independence rather, and all company secretaries should try to be as independent as possible.
Thank you very much. I can see that we all agree that independence is part of the core of what a company secretary should have to effectively perform the function as an advisor to the board. My next question is to Mr. Samuel. How has regulatory framework shaped the responsibility and decision-making of the company secretary? Who is a company secretary in this aspect? Who is a company secretary primarily accountable to? Is it the board of directors? Is it the shareholders or the managing director of the company? Mr. Samuel.
Thank you very much. Well, just before I come to this issue of regulatory framework, I will also just say that Principle 8.1 of the 2018 code actually talks about the independent, that the company secretary is meant to provide independent guidance and support at the highest level of decision-making in the company. So I think essentially that is what we're looking at. But if I come back to the regulatory framework that shapes the responsibility and decision-making of company secretary, and of course the twin question of who the company secretary is primarily accountable to, the board of directors, the shareholders, or the CEO. So maybe I would like to start with that. You know, typically it's said that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. But in our context, the company secretary is appointed and is removable by the board. So to that extent, and it's also clearly stated in the code that the company secretary is really accountable, is responsible to the board of directors, not to shareholders, not to CEO. Of course, the code says, well, the code, there's a division in the code saying that the company secretary professionally is responsible to the board through the chair, and administratively is responsible to the CEO. Administratively will be in the context of carrying out his day-to-day non-professional responsibilities. But as far as the professional aspect of the job is concerned, he responds to the board through the chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Now, flowing from what you said, my next question is to Mrs. Lasayinde. How can a company secretary draw the line between board assistants and performing PA duties to directors?
Thank you, Lushola. This is a very interesting question. And to be honest, we would all have probably gone through this circle or this phase in our lives when, as young professionals, we get on the road, young or inexperienced, and then we do not pay much attention to what is going on. But look, this is a practical session, so I'm really going to speak bluntly about this. When we move out of that phase of a young, let me say, newbie company secretary, we need to begin to work on other skills, other soft skills, especially like the power of our personal brand. Now, at some point, you got on the job, you're excited, you're ready to be anybody's PA, you know, especially unconsciously. You're trying to make a good first impression, early days. The chairman will call you, Abiola, can you follow my driver to Akure quickly? There's some land documents that I've been meaning to get somebody, you know, of your level. And you're like, oh, Mr. Chairman, sure, sir. Let me just take permission. And then you go on with this very low life, if I can use that word, until you get to a stage where you have built confidence on the job. You have proven yourself as a true professional that you are. And then you begin to call the shots in a very tactical way. Okay, you don't want to just get off that mundane, low-level life that you got on, but you have to be tactical about it. You have to begin to see the value you bring to the table as valuable indeed, as something that you can almost brag about. You begin to look at the metrics changing because you have helped to, you know, shut down all the noise around regulatory infractions, and you're beginning to show your worth. So you think about your personal brand. Who is Abiola? And then you begin to, you know, separate yourself from that life. And how do you go about that in just 30 seconds, right? You now can leverage the power you have to delegate. You now can put in opportunities for you to have feedback with these people who have turned you into boy, because it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to be overnight. You begin to look for, you know, you will have to establish that feedback mechanism. What you're saying to your chairman, especially if it's overbearing, you initiate a feedback every year or every quarter, and you're able to tell him what he has done absolutely well and what you would like to see done differently, and vice versa. So you have to be in charge of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's topic is something that I thought I was the only one that had this issue when I started, but apparently it's a common, it's rampant. Almost everyone has tasted it one way or the other. My next question now goes to TT. Do external company secretaries have any advantage over in-house company secretary and vice versa when it comes to being independent?
Okay, thank you, Olushola. As you will appreciate, I'm quite biased on this question because I'm an external company secretary. So off the top of my head, I would say, yeah, external company secretaries have more advantage over in-house company secretaries, but that won't be entirely correct because both external and internal company secretaries have their own advantages and disadvantages. For example, for an external company secretary, there's that perceived independence where you're not reporting to the MD directly, you're reporting to the board. External company secretaries have diverse experience because they're sitting on different boards and they're able to bring that into whatever advisory they're giving to the board. Of course, there's also specialization for external company secretaries where they're actually specialized on legal compliance and board governance issues. And there are disadvantages for external company secretaries as well because there's limited knowledge. They're not sitting in the company, so they do not have a lot of knowledge of the operations and business of that company. And of course, there are communication barriers where things may be lost in, in communication flow because they're not sitting in the company. And for in-house company secretaries, an advantage that I would say that is very critical is their deep knowledge of the business. So they have knowledge of the business, they know how the business operates, and they can bring that into whatever advisory that they're giving to their board or their CEO. And of course, there's strong relationships as well. But for disadvantages for in-house company secretaries, of course, is the issue of independence. How independent can they really be when you're reporting to the person who is paying your salary and who takes all the decisions, who can hire and fire you? And of course, there's also limited expertise. Sometimes in-house company secretaries don't have as much governance or compliance expertise as external company secretaries would do that every day. So I don't think there's a single answer to say, oh, there's one is better than the other. I think it really then depends on how much independence you can bring to that role, how you function in that role, and then what the needs of the business are. But I mean, if I had to vote, I'll look for external company secretaries. Thank you.
I understand, and it makes total sense. When the person pays your salary, there's a level there's a limit to what you can say. So now I am going through the chat, and I can see some of our participants has dropped their questions. Someone is asking, how can a young company secretary handle a chairman or an MD who bullies to get their way? I don't know if Mrs. Lassendi would like to take this question first.
Yeah, thank you. Who is that? Chief Adewale Adeniji. Like I said earlier, you can almost be rest assured that you may face this, especially when you're young, you're inexperienced, and you're absolutely passionate about the job, because for you to have gotten the role, you must have demonstrated competency to handle it. So what do you do when you are being bullied? You need to establish a feedback mechanism. You need to go back to the bullies. You need to let them know what their actions and the things they're doing, how it makes you feel, how it takes away from your concentration or the ability to deliver on the job. So you're going to them, making it look like it's a problem you have handling the situation or the scenarios that you're facing. You know, that's tact, that's being emotionally intelligent. So you don't go in a confrontational manner. You know, we're being practical here so that we can all just take something cogent out of this session. And you go and you're like, I have a problem with, you know, when I receive this kind of instruction, maybe you can help me, sir, Mr. MD. This is what triggers, or this is how it triggers my emotion. And because I am new, I am trying to give my best. How do you think I handle this approach? When I get this approach from you or from any of the senior executives, this is what I'm perceiving. And you find out that you're actually discussing that same challenge with the originator of what you're going through. If that doesn't work, you may have to, in a very tactical manner, you know, seek counsel, maybe with your HR. You know, they'll have to hold these conversations in confidence. You will have to discuss if there's a need for you to even escalate further. If it's an MD doing this to you, you definitely have to find a way, especially if you're in an environment where you have the opportunity to escalate and get support, or even, you know, go as far as blowing the whistle. And of course, the ultimate call is up to you. If you have done everything you can to ensure that your those who are bullying you get the message, they understand how it makes you feel, how it takes away from you, from delivering excellently on the job, then you may have to consider other options. You know, there's no point staying in a toxic environment where you cannot give your best, where you are distracted by all those soft and, you know, inconsequential issues or things that are not adding to your own ability to give your best. So, you know, like I always say, every job is actually a bus stop. It's not your life. I believe wrapping your life around a job 100%. But I also believe that that job is not you. So when you leave that job, you don't become a lesser company secretary or you become someone without a label. You're a valuable person. So at every point, please evaluate your options and go for the best. It's all about you.
Thank you very much. That's so apt. And for those that are in these situations, you have the opportunity to explore in-house through other people you feel you can speak to, like the HR. And where this doesn't work, after exploring all your options, then you might have to consider which is best for you, to stay or to look for other options. Now, my next question, I asked a similar question to Ms. PT, and she had given us her biased view, which we understand and is accurate. Now, my next question goes to Mr. Samuel. Please, what can a company secretary do, or what should they do to boost their independence and stature? What strategy can they employ to maintain autonomy and integrity in their role?
Well, thank you very much. I think independence, autonomy, strengthening their position has to do largely with their knowledge base, with their professionalism, and the investments they have made into themselves in terms of being able to stand to whoever, that whether it's the board, whether it's the CEO or whoever they are relating with or regulators, they will respect them because they have attained a level of proficiency, a level of experience and credibility that they cannot readily ignore them. So what I would say is that it has to do with self-development, investing in yourself. You have quite a number of training opportunities. ISAN is doing a great work. There are other opportunities. So you just have to enhance your professional presence. And of course, by so doing, you'll have enhanced, because really for me, that is really what provides the independence. You know your onions, and then you can stand up to whoever. And from my own personal experience, we had an issue when I was still working in the company, and there was the issue of, I think, separation of the role of the chairman of the governance and remuneration committee from that of the board chair. And I had to advise on it. I had to, I met with the chair then. I discussed with the CEO and I said, I don't think this is the right thing to do. And of course, I documented it. And eventually, when the regulator, the NGS, came around after, observing an AGM, of course, they came back with a deficiency letter that we were not doing the right thing, and they ordered us to do the right thing. And of course, it was apparent to everybody that the company secretary had actually drawn their attention to it. So the company secretary was not at fault, So that's my intervention.
Oh, thank you very much. So as company secretary, you need to upgrade your skills, read more books. And my next question goes to TT. How can a company secretary stay abreast of industry trends and best practices? I know that online you do a lot of, you give us insights on your program Beyond My Log. So I believe that this question is apt and spot on for you.
Okay, thank you, Olushola. So keeping abreast, we've already talked about, online resources, reading industry publications and blogs like mine, attending industry conferences. But I think it's also key to do a benchmarking. So as a company secretary, whether you're in-house or external, you need to benchmark your corporate governance knowledge or your corporate governance practice against what best practice is. As you are bridging that gap, you will definitely be able to keep abreast of what is new, what do I need to improve on, what do I need to update, what are the things I need to learn. So I think that benchmarking is very key. So you look for what is best practice, and then you begin to upskill or upgrade your own knowledge and practice. And of course, it's also very important to network with other company secretaries. What you can gain from that is you are aware of their challenges, and most importantly, or more importantly, you are aware of how they are navigating those challenges. So when you talk to them, you find out what issues they're having with their boards and how they've been able to resolve them. And then I think I didn't talk about that. Seeking out mentorship. It's very important to speak to mentors, identify a mentor who is doing what you want, and how, seeking that person out so that you can learn from them, learn from their mistakes, learn from their challenges. Experience is always the best teacher, and it's better when you can get it from somebody else who has already gone through that. So those are the key ways that I believe that you can stay abreast of industry trends.
Thank you very much. I love the benchmarking, mentorship, attending conference, utilizing online resources. just for career development and growth. My next question, which is similar to one already in the chat box, goes to Mrs. Lasende. Now, in the chat box, they're saying, in a situation where the MD or founder of the company somewhat has a low view on governance compliance, what do you do? And this is similar to our question here, which is also for you. They're saying an independent company secretary, how can an independent company secretary contribute to corporate governance and compliance and transparency? So it's all talking about compliance, governance, transparency. What should the company secretary do to encourage this in a company, even when the chairman is not on board?
Thank you so much, Titi. So I think I have experienced this. Again, it was my early days as a company secretary where I joined a company that just raised money from the stock exchange. So it wasn't really like a company that was prepared to embrace the corporate governance values and all the ethics that come with being a publicly quoted company. So it was tough. It was tough. In fact, I used to like tell my friends then that, look, if my company could have its way by giving something to a chair at SEC or at NSC for us to have our way or get an approval that to do it. And it used to go against my own personal values. So what I did to help me change the narrative a bit, because eventually I had to leave, was to begin to project the value of embracing and entrenching corporate governance as a way of life. Okay, I didn't project it as a tick box exercise or something that we need to do because is a nice to have. It's I try, you know, within my capacity to project the value and also to help them understand that corporate governance is a journey. Okay, so everyone will have to go through a reorientation. When you talk about companies that have lived and they've, you know, they have long history, they are sustainable and they have thrived, you know, companies that have moved from someone's family kitchen to becoming a globally recognized company today. When you have every opportunity to help them embrace the values and the benefits of having corporate governance at the core of the business, then you know that the narrative will change. So how can we do this? Right? You have to consistently educate the board. You are the corporate governance champion. You are the board advisor. You are the one who will keep telling them that, look, my job is to stand as a gatekeeper, ensuring that distractions are, if not entirely eliminated, they are limited. You know, they go to the barest minimum. And so therefore, you need their support for you to be an effective gatekeeper, for you to be an effective champion of these governance ideals, and for you to be a board educator. So the onus is really on us to paint that value, because for some, they can't give what they don't have. We have gone through certification exams. Like Titi said, we keep learning and unlearning. We've had interaction with what a good company should look like because they have entrenched governance. So the onus is always on that company secretary to do it patiently, to know that it is not a sprint, but a lot of time is a marathon, to hold the board and take them through the journey. And you keep evaluating, you know, once there is any huge achievements because you were compliant, because you did something right, celebrate it. Okay. And ensure that you amplify the benefits of corporate governance.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. And moving on, still on governance issue, my next question is to Titi, and it's from the chat box. Someone is asking, Laide Adeyemo is asking, how do you handle an MD that has pocketed the members of the board such that they look the other way in the face of corporate governance? I know that you are the company secretary for so many boards. You're not restricted to one company. So where you observe this kind of situation, how best can a company secretary handle such?
Thank you, Shola, and thank you, Mrs. Adeyemo, for the question. So if just to rephrase, the question is, how do you deal with an MD who has pocketed the entire board?
Yes, please. Yes, please. So that they do not give room for corporate governance.
Okay, so I mean, the entire board makes it more tricky because first I would have said, you go to the chairman to, to try to see if that person will be independent enough to be able to take on the issue. But when it's the entire board, I think that what you then need to do, like Mrs. Lasende and Mr. Samuel have said earlier, is to continue to reiterate what best practice is, to continue to to speak to the board on what best practices and the benefits for the company, particularly how we relate to corporate sustainability to ensure that that business continues to thrive long term. I think it's important to continue to reiterate that. And it's also important, like Mr. Samuel said, to document your advice to the board, so that in the case where regulators or external parties or third parties come in and try to say, oh, so why is the company not compliant? Why haven't they taken this up and all that? You have documents or correspondence to show that, well, I as company secretary have been advising on this matter, but I haven't been able to make a headway because of so and so. So I think it's important to continue to reiterate, one, and to document. And I think most importantly, for people who are not, who don't easily key in to corporate governance and embracing corporate governance, I think what is most important is to help them see how it affects the bottom line. When you can link corporate governance to the bottom line, business owners will sit up and embrace it. So I think that those are some of the things that you can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Titi. I appreciate your comments and advice. My next question is also from the chat box, and it's from Dr. Wale Popola. And my question goes to Mr. Samuel. He's saying, what does a company secretary, what should a company secretary do to educate stakeholders on the role of a company secretary to ensure balance of interest, that balance of interest is achieved? So what should the company secretary do to educate people? Now, I want to chip in another dimension to the question. So sometimes we find ourselves in companies or organizations that some other staffs or stakeholders do not know the principal responsibility or importance of a company secretary. So in that instance, how do you enlighten them on your importance or on our importance?
Well, thank you very much. The good thing is, I think just like the chairman of Eastern Lagos stated in his opening remarks, the company secretary of today is not just a clerk. If you look at the code, his position is actually strengthened. It's meant to be a senior management employee. So he has the benefit of not only interacting with the board members, he's also interacting with senior management. So I'll tell you from my experience, what I used to do is to provide what I call either legal or governance updates. Once there's a new development in the governance space or in the legal space, of course, myself and my team will quickly summarize, and then we'll escalate to the board. This is the new development. We'll do gap analysis. This is where we are. This is, what are left for us to achieve. This is the roadmap to getting there. And of course, at business meeting, we also had this group business review. And of course, as a company secretary, I was a member of the group senior management leadership team. And of course, so when everybody has presented their business, done performance review for their businesses, I would then chip in and I say, look, from legal governance perspectives. These are the new development. These are the things we have to do. Of course, one of the things I also did was to set up what I call legal governance audits across the group. So we're going with my team, we're going from business to business. And of course, we had this legal regulatory rule book that was in place, communicated business by business, and then we visit them to audit their business operations, to tell them, look, these are the gaps, these are the things you have to do. So increasingly, the company secretary should not just be reticent or just be in the boardroom or in the management space, and it says it's to be seen and not heard. You've got to be heard, you've got to speak out, and you've got to tell them, purge them of their ignorance, and let them know that, look, in fact, like we used to say, compliance has become a business model. And if you don't do compliance well, it will hit your bottom line, because you suffer not only reputational damage, not only sanctions in point of payment of fines and all the rest of them, or you are being asked to be named in the annual report, or the regulatory is applied to you. So it's really something that the company secretary is really the one in the best position to increasingly and continually educate not only the members of the board, but also senior management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, my last question is to all three discussants. And the question is, looking ahead, what are the anticipated changes and trends that will shape the future landscape of company secretary? We will use this as our closing remarks, each of our discussants, starting now with Mrs. Abiola Lasende. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishola. So my first advice would be, can we please stop being accidental company secretaries? We can't afford that lane again. We can't afford that label again. We need to embrace the culture of learning, unlearning and relearning. The biggest disruption to our ecosystem as chartered governance will be technology. I know that goes without saying. So those of us that are adverse and you're afraid of technology, you have to get into that system. You have to get into conversations and things that will help us. We need to equip ourselves. We will not become irrelevant, but we need to work on our personal brand. We need to work on, maintaining the value that we bring to the table. We need to begin to quantify what we do. We need to begin to talk about Naira and Kobo. This quarter, I saved the company this much because we had zero, compliance infractions and stuff like that. We need to begin to talk about numbers. We need to begin to work on ourselves to be seen as effective business partners. We should not leave those labels to only finance and the marketing department. We need to demonstrate how we are effectively partnering, collaborating with the business to ensure that the bottom line is what is really looking good. We need to stop being shy. We need to let go of imposter syndrome, always, second guessing ourselves, thinking that with the quality of our work, be appreciated enough. You are more than enough. Let's begin to take hold of conversations that will show that we're in this strategic in every conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that point. We've gone at those days when we're just the typists or the assistants. Now we need to do more and show them that we can partner and grow the business with them. We are not just legal, we are partners with them. So I'd like Mrs. Titi to also respond to this question.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a very exciting future for company secretaries. Very exciting. Mrs. Lasende has already mentioned how technology is going to play a major part in what we do. And so I believe that company secretaries, like she said, they need to embrace technology. I think that company secretaries need to begin to upskill in areas of cybersecurity, data protection, data privacy, Our role, what technology is doing for our profession is to help us focus on what is most important. So technology is helping us with all the administrative issues now, and we need to focus on being strategic advisors, thought leaders, contributing to the long-term value and sustainability of the company. So company secretaries need to expand their skills and their expertise into other areas that relate to technology, because that's really the future. Those are my closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Godwin Samuel.
Well, thank you very much. I think the point about technology has been well made. My emphasis would be that company secretaries and perhaps you also double as legal advisors, that we should increasingly adopt a collegial approach. It's been done. It's just for us to strengthen that bit of our work. That is to say that you find associations like ASLA and some other bodies. So I think increasingly a company secretary may not be able to go it alone. So we need this collaboration, and then it strengthens our hand. You know, and there are times that you talk back to your people and you say, look, we had a meeting of our group and this was our resolution. You know, so it's important. And also playing very important role in the professional body like ICSAN is also very important. Engagement with regulator is very important, and having very good rapport with the shareholders. Otherwise, they can mess you up at some meetings. So it's also good that you are very close to them. So on the whole, I think the last point to make is that the company secretary should be very visible and active in business. It should not just be seen as a cost center. You must also bring to the fore the contributions you are making to business sustainability. And so that is also very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We thank our discussants again for this insightful discussion. I learned a lot. I was looking forward to a lot of questions and they've been answered. I appreciate. Then I'd like to, someone is saying, thank you, Mr. Samuel, for those tips. Another person is saying, thank you, Mrs. Lasande. Thank you, Titi Lokwe, for these wonderful suggestions. And I'd like to hand over the mic to the chairman of the ICSAN Lagos chapter, Mr. Olufemi Shokon. I believe he has 1 or 2 words to say to us, after which our chairperson of the ICSAN Lagos Charter Education Committee will give a closing remark. Over to you, my chairman, sir, Mr. Olufemi Shokon.
Thank you very much, Olushola, our moderator. Let me first of all appreciate the president of ICSAN and the chairman of the council, Mrs. Ekundayo FCIS, our vice president, Mrs. Uto Ukwana FCIS, our treasurer, Mr. Francis Olawale, FCIS, our past president online, Mr. Bode Ayeko FCIS, all council members that are present. I can see Mr. Dele Tokunde FCIS, Mr. Tony Okoma FCIS, and of course, some of our elders there, Ms. Ronke Opajobi FCIS, and all other corporate governance practitioners online. Indeed, it's been a wonderful session, and I want to appreciate all our discussants, Mrs. Biola Lasande, the FCIS, Mr. Godwin Samuel, and Mrs. Titi Lokwe Martins ACIS. Indeed, it's been a robust session, and within the 1 hour that we had in this program, it's been very wonderful. Mrs. Lasande, she was able to let us know that the key thing is our personal brand, and she was very practical about that. For Mr. Godwin Samuel, thank you so much, sir. You delve into the regulatory provisions, and of course, our dear Mrs. Titilope. She gave us experience from the external view. This together, really, gave us a robust insight into the discussion of the day. And I want to appreciate as well the Education Committee. A big kudos to them putting together this wonderful program. And I can say officially, this is like the final of the program before our election and the AGM coming up on the 21st of March, by the grace of God. And before I go, I want to just let us know that the ICSAN Membership Summit 2024 will be coming up on Tuesday, the 19th of March, 11 a.m. at the ICSAN National Secretariat. Please let us be there. It's for us to join as members. And also our annual general meeting for Lagos State Chapter will be coming up on the 21st. Same as the venue will be at the National Secretariat, and that will be by 10 a.m. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And I believe that we've taken something home, and the practical session has actually answered a lot of questions that have been bothering our mind. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless.
Thank you very much. And I invite our chairperson, Mrs. Noye Izobi, for her closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Shola. I just wanted to use this opportunity to say a very big thank you to all our discussants, Mrs. Abiola Lasende, Mr. Godwin Samuel, Mrs. Titi Martins Wakwe, and of course, our very able moderator, Ms. Olushola Adeniro. Thank you so much to all of you. I would just comment that, this was short notice to our discussants, but they were, they rose to the occasion, communicative, and as you've all witnessed, this has been a truly enlightening 1 hour. I would also like to say a big thank you to the Education Committee. I call us the Action Committee. When you call, people answer and are ready to move. I would implore everybody on here, if, when we reach out to you, there are so many more topics we have under this Learning Hub. So please, when we reach out, respond as our able discussants have just done. And, the idea, as I said earlier, is to continue to learn, to share ideas, to stay abreast of, of industry trends. So thank you all again for joining, and I wish you the very best of the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you to my co-panelists. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.